Hello, everyone, and welcome to Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I'll be in the driver's seat once again for today's show as we strive to learn how to stop doing deals and learning how to close customers for life. And we do that by interviewing some of the most successful people all over in business to see the secret sauce of how they do what they do. That being said, we have a great show today for you because once again, we have a great guest, Mr. Blair Nichols. Blair, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
A pleasure is definitely on this end of the equation, my friend. So why don't you tell everybody what it is that you do?
Sure, yeah. I'm the owner of BBN Creative Management, and I'm a speaker, manager, and coach. I work with a lot of different types of business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders that are looking to grow their speaking business and are also integrating their speaking in any way, shape, or form with their broader business goals. So really helping them figure out the best strategy for them and their business and what they're looking to do.
What got you started doing that?
Yeah, definitely not an industry that I knew about as a kid growing up. I don't know that anyone thought I'm gonna be a speaker. Maybe some did, and or in this industry at all. But I started off in publishing and out of undergrad, and I my first job was at the HarperCollins Speakers Bureau. So I knew I wanted to work in publishing, work with authors, but I'd already kind of figured out I didn't like the editorial and I was going to maybe do something in publicity, and this job kind of came up, and ever since then it's been a wild ride of being on all different sides of the industry from different agencies, working directly with some thought leaders, and and running different types of businesses within it and around it that gave me a real kind of broad view at the industry as a whole. But started off working with authors. After their book tours would end, we would pick up and try to get them paid gigs, and for the publisher they wanted to sell more books, so we'd always make sure that books were included as part of the deal.
Awesome. So it's a happy synergy there. What do you like best about it, Blair?
Yeah, well, what's interesting about the industry is that it's always evolving. There's always new topics, new, not just authors. I mean, a lot of people are speakers from all different avenues today. You don't have to be an author to be out there as a speaker. A lot of people are sharing their thought leadership on all different types of platforms. So I really love working with all different types of people and speakers and all different topics because I get to learn a lot about a lot of different things. Like, I'm very curious. I'm not necessarily like a deep expert in anything beyond my career, really. I like to learn a lot about different stuff. So it's cool to be able to work with people who are spreading positive messages, who are really educating and sharing their knowledge and expertise. And it is an industry, but most of the people that are involved in it have some advocation purpose kind of attached to it. So I like, again, that generally it's a positive thing. It's something that's hopefully making a difference in people's lives or careers, and I get to be a little part of that.
Yeah, you got to be a piece of the bigger puzzle and help people that are really making the world a better and different place. That's always a good place to be. Where do you think the success has come from for you?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's about being creative and about being willing to try different things and to take a look at how things were done and see if they, could be done differently or better. A lot of the people in this industry are really focused on just one lane of speaking. They're focused on getting paid talks, and they think that's kind of like the end all be all. If I could just get out there and get on stage and, make tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, like that would just be the best. And, to be honest, it takes a lot of work to get to a level like that. And if your only focus is on those paid keynotes and another 2020 or some other awful event comes around, then your business is gonna suffer all over again because that one single source of revenue just changed really dramatically. So
Yeah.
I'm all about, how are you thinking differently about your speaking? How are you strategizing so that speaking is doing more for you than just getting that one check? How is this audience going to follow you into B2C products, or how is this event a platform for more B2B business, depending on what your business is, what your goals are. So I'm helping people think about the strategy. And I think for me, that's what's kind of made me unique. I just kind of like to come into organizations while I was not working for myself. I would often be kind of like helping build a new department or a new revenue line or a new partnership or something. And so it was always in that building, kind of incubating, launching phase. And so that's where I find myself with a lot of clients who are either new to the space, or they've been in the space and they need a refresh, or they've got a new book or a new project or something that they need help kind of figuring out how they can launch and grow. So I think all those things kind of wrapped up kind of led me to what I'm doing now.
Gotcha. In your assessment of yourself, what do you think in your makeup makes you good at this particular thing that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for a lot of my life, I was really good at being observant, really kind of taking a lot of things in and doing a lot of listening. I did my fair share of talking, I'm sure, at points as well, but I know that I've always had like kind of a keen observational eye, and I really kind of pick up on things and have kind of hopefully honed that with my clients so that I can give them really nuanced feedback, and so that in this space I'm able to translate their expertise to the market, because that's my job, is to not just help them and coach them on their content. Otherwise, I'm often the one that's communicating their value or their message. And what the difficult thing of being an agent often is trying to be smart enough to be able to speak intelligently on all these different topics, because most of the time you're running all over the place trying to just get enough speakers kind of pulled together for a proposal, and being able to pitch all of them can be a challenge, which is why I like the management side. But helping now translate for them, helping them figure out what their brilliance is just by listening, and then making that kind of how we position them is what I love to do. And I think that's just come from a young age where I was doing that.
And so, how do you manage yourself through all of this? It seems like this could be at times a demoralizing uh, business model to be in, where there's just the disappointment of trying to put proposals together and having them fall through and stuff like this. How do you manage you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I've always just looked beyond to like what I want, where this is going. Not just how am I going to make my goal this week or this year, but how is where I'm at now, like building to really what I want to be doing. So I built my business so far around like the kind of life that I wanted, the kind of people that I wanted to work with, and being able to kind of focus on where my strengths are. But like any sales job, you just kind of get used to that. Most of my career has been sales. So you're not going to win every lead that comes in. You're not going to win every proposal. And unfortunately, that's part of it. Sometimes you do, and then the speaker says no, or the speaker's busy, or something else happens to make the deal fall through. So that's kind of like, it just kind of comes with the territory in sales. And so you kind of have more of a sales mindset in that. But that's also what I grew really tired of. I didn't mind, like the thrill of the sales and all, but I just thought how are we just even maximizing everything else? So I think I just really like the post sale now. How are we turning this event into even more opportunity? And that got me more excited, and less than just, I just want to churn and burn and close deals. And every year I'm talking to the same people and booking all their speakers. I've seen people that were doing it for 20, 30 years and making a great living at it. But I just couldn't imagine myself, doing the same thing kind of year in, year out. Maybe there's some growth, maybe not. Like maybe there's, just kind of a steady state. I wanted to, I liked working with the talent. I wanted to keep moving in that direction.
All right, good stuff. So, what do you think makes you passionate about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff I mentioned, where it is such a motivating industry, most of the people, are there to both motivate, inspire, and share, value and knowledge and everything else. So it's great to be part of something that is generally positive and generally generates a positive impact on people. And I like that there's always new voices, new ideas, and new ways that the industry kind of evolves every time, there's a recession or there's a pandemic and all these things. It's been like some other industries, one that continues to survive. It's been around for thousands of years. In some respects, it's been pretty, common in the economy for hundreds of years. So it seems like something that's going to continue in one way, shape, or form, and it's just been fun to kind of keep figuring out how I can best fit into it and serve those that are always more and more people getting interested in it as we become, I guess, less and less afraid of public speaking as a species, I guess.
I guess, yeah, no, it was always something I was terrified of, and I find myself. I mean, this year I was on pace to do about 240 days speaking, but
Oh
the
my
hurricane,
goodness.
yeah, no, the hurricane knocked me back. I'm probably going to make about 220 something instead.
That's
So
crazy. So you're
I,
you're like top of the game as far as it's not really that easy to book every date on the calendar. That's the people they're not friendly that way with their
yeah,
planning.
no, that can be a thing. But I mean, I also have local groups that, like if you're not going anyplace else, come hang out with us. So
Perfect.
those
Yeah.
calendar fillers are nice as well. And
That's
as long as
awesome.
you're giving people good value, right, and moving the needle, that's that spoken word really does have the power to take and help people to get past whatever it is that they're going through. And so, if other people's lives can be better because of something you have to say. I really can't imagine a much better use of time than that if you can do it. So here's to my level best every day to go out there and try to make that the case. But yeah, no, it's a thing, man. And I mean, I never realized. I just went for the first time this past year to NSA, the National
Okay.
Speakers Association, and you see a room full of these folks that are all very, very good at what they do, and you realize that this is a small subset of the overall subset of people that are in this space and killing it. It's very interesting, really, really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what you shared. I mean, it is all about that impact, and I always remind people who do get nervous that you're here to give a gift. You're not being critiqued. It's not a performance. It shouldn't be. It should feel like you're here in service. So I love that that's your approach, and that's the what I kind of look for in speakers in general. Yeah, the opportunities are abundant now, and there's a lot of competition out there. As you mentioned, there's all different types, but that's why I always encourage people, don't think about it in one lane. Think about your niche, think about your ideal client, think about what you can offer in products and services on top of speaking that will make it worthwhile and make it able to sustain you as a business. Where if you're just trying to build a business built on speaking fees, it's going to take a while to add up to a normal salary, if depending on what you're trying to do. So that's I just think a lot of people forget about that as they're even starting out, like
Yeah,
building those building blocks, building just an email list. If every time you're speaking you're just figuring out how to get people to text in their text or email and send them a free gift so you can get their email list, so you can at least start to have your own base of customers to market to. Everything's an opportunity, and I just know so many speakers go out and don't necessarily make the most of it.
yeah, no. I mean, the first 7 or 8 years I did it, I did not have a clue how to do that. I just, the problem is it's really a series of skills, technological skills, sales skills, all sorts of things that really come in to maximizing that platform that you have and doing it in a way that I think is ethically and morally right. Like you're following the Zig Ziglar model of help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. Like you're really solving a problem rather than just razzle dazzle. Let me separate you from your money, which so many people seem like they do, and it's just, especially in my industry. I'm in real estate, so like real estate, there is for every dollar an agent makes, there's like 1,000 people out there looking to separate them from that dollar from some other sales technique or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's, you have a sales business that you're trying to sell into, and realistically almost acknowledging, hey, look, guys, I know everybody else is looking to sell it to you, and I don't want to be that. So, here's the opportunity. Here's the things we have. You want it? It's cool. If not, I'm not looking to push this on people. It's really an interesting space when you're selling to people that sell for a living.
Oh yeah.
It creates an
Oh yeah.
interesting dynamic. But what's a tool that you would suggest to help our listeners?
Yeah, well, I think I can't understate the power of storytelling. I mean, whether it's on stage or just in your sales or in your day-to-day interactions, having a little more coherent story or stories kind of like at your fingertips, it's really how people connect with you. It's how they remember you. It doesn't feel like a pitch then, like to your point, like you feel like, you're just learning a story. And if you can connect it to something that's related to the business, and I think a lot of people go out and approach speaking at first as kind of subject matter experts. Maybe they come out and introduce themselves or credentialize themselves, or they just launch into their topic. But what separates the higher level keynote speakers is the people who come out and tell a story and
Yep.
connect with that audience first. So now you've got them, and then you can educate them. Make sure, like, to your point, you have to be delivering value. You can't just be, you know, selling them crap and not teaching anything just to try to hook them onto the next thing. But if
Yep.
you only have 45 minutes, you can't teach everything. You can't put a book into a one keynote presentation. So, don't expect that they're going to walk away with a mastery in what you teach. So they should want to learn more if you do a good job. And to your point, be upfront here. I'm like, sign up for this free resource and give me your email address, and then they can opt out if they don't want to get more emails from you, or they don't want your course or your books or your anything else.
Sure.
So but if they like what you've connected them to, and they think there's value in what you've shared, then yeah, that's what you're looking to do. And I think a lot of people, though, think that the audience is just going to come find them, or that they get maybe a few each time. But I have clients who are converting 80-90% of their audiences. Just getting their emails alone is a huge feat. So
Sure.
I agree, there's the tech mechanisms of it all, and just kind of the art, and not being too clunky about it. But if you end with the story, if you get that out of the way and then bring them back to a place, however you want to leave them in an emotional way, then that's a great way to close things out too, and a great way for them to remember you.
I and as you're talking about it, and I'm thinking about it because I've recently done a lot more keynoting, and I've always felt like good comedians. They tell a joke series at the beginning, and then as they wrap up their show, they'll tie back. They'll say something that ties back to that, and it's just like five times as hilarious. And I find
Exactly.
it's with a good keynote, that the stories you tell early, and then if you circle back to that at the end. The problem I have when I do it is I start to cry as I'm delivering it. Um, but
But that's
yeah,
good.
man,
That's vulnerability. That's connection too. That's
just being
that,
soft as hell. I don't know what it is, man, but especially those stories about my dad, they get me every time. It's
but
only
that
so far you can push.
I mean, but that's good. It feels real then, and people know when you're faking it. People know when it's not authentic, and
Sure.
that's what people really want more than anything. They don't need you to be the most energetic, most articulate, person ever. They need you to be authentic. Like, that's what makes people feel comfortable, and that's what makes them connect with you.
Yeah, they feel like the information is genuine rather than it's serving some ulterior motive, and that's when they really
Absolutely.
take it in. This
Yeah.
this is genuine advice born through pain, suffering, blood, sweat, and tears. Please take it for what it's worth and use it to make yours journey a little bit better. I'm a fan of that line of thinking at least. So,
Yeah.
what do you see as the opportunity in the market today?
Yeah, well, I see that. I think a lot of businesses, if not all businesses, could be served by some form of speaking. I mean, I know plumbers who've made, millions because they put YouTube videos up, and then they got tons of plumbing customers because not everyone wants to do it themselves or can do everything themselves, but they, were instructing people on how to do simple things around the house. And that's just one example of all different types of speaking and stages and platforms that people are ignoring, potentially for their business. If you're in the business of helping serve in any sort of service, it doesn't have to be consulting and coaching. You're in the business of educating. So you're in the business of providing value in different ways. So I think a lot of people could benefit from all the new virtual opportunities, all of these different organizations that are looking for speakers. So it's not just about chasing corporate dollars, it's about knowing who your ideal customer, client, audience is, and figuring out where they gather, whether it's big or small, and starting with, places where you just, barter your time for getting in front of that audience and work up to generating demand for your speaking so you can, bring up a higher fee or start charging a fee depending on what it is. But don't discount all of the places you can be doing this for free and on different platforms to also try to reach these audiences if you haven't done that yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've in solving the problem that we talked about, the problems I mentioned before, like I wasn't getting email addresses and all, the ways we found to help people has increased so much. And you're right. The plumber, their shtick, it's not anything that they do is that incredibly complex most of the time. It's that just in thinking about doing it, I don't want to. Like this big tip here, Blair. Never let anybody know that you know how to do plumbing work. Electrical work, other stuff, sure. Never let them know you can do plumbing. I don't know how to do it. Like totally plead ignorance, because otherwise, it's. I have a cousin. He is a carpenter and like a master carpenter. Does kitchens and custom builds and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, Josh, I got to tell you, the guys that have it absolutely locked up are the plumbers. Because, well, the electricians and the plumbers, they both can really nail you. I mean, they can really hit you hard with the bill. The plumber gets all the service calls. I mean, electrical stuff doesn't break that often. Plumbing stuff. And so, it's just a great, like, recurring business built. Like, who else are you going to call? You're going to call a different plumber, the guy that came last time.
Totally.
Just kind of an interesting take on it. But it's interesting you mentioned plumbers. But you're right. Every one of these groups has their individual problems that, if somebody really can articulate the problem and articulate a path from where they are to where the solution is, and lay that out for folks, finding that problem, again, Zig Ziglar, find the problem, solve the problem, give enough people what they need, you'll get what you need.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And then when the next bigger problem comes along, then they still need you. So it can escalate.
The service call.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what do you think is the most important thing you've learned in the process of doing what you've done?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most important thing is clear expectations, especially when it comes to agency or agent client relationships, or
Sure.
any relationship, and just in general, for myself, for all sorts of things. Like the better I could get at being clear and honest about what they should expect, what growth looks like, what my part in it is, what their part in it is. And I've noticed, every time when, there's been an unsuccessful relationship, it's been misaligned expectations, or even if expectations were set, then honoring them. If they say they're going to, do something and do that part, and that doesn't happen, then yeah, you have to not especially as solopreneurs, or where we're at in my business, I don't have time to not have strong partners who are willing to live up to both sides of the expectations. But it's on me to set those too, and to make sure that I'm living up to them as well.
Yeah, no, you want to be with people who do what they say. That integrity is such an important part. But I mean, being a person of integrity tends to allow you to have the moral high ground to demand that from other people as well.
Yeah, I
And
definitely ran into enough people where that wasn't their biggest priority. So I think you learn that that's an integral and non-negotiable.
yeah, no, it's I've said it on here many times. One of the things I learned from my father's friends, my father's people, when they would come around. My father was older when I came along, so when I was a kid, all these guys in their 60s and 70s are sitting around the house on the weekend playing pinochle, and I'm sitting there like 9, 10 years old playing cards with these guys, and they talk about the docks in New York and all the stuff, and the one guy was a numbers runner for the mob, and the other, I mean, like all these like interesting, super colorful, seedy characters that are down in Florida from New York. But I always used to say that there was one thing I remembered that was kind of the high praise that was issued amongst these men that everybody knew, that was that was about as good as it gets. And they would say, oh, he's a stand-up guy. And there really wasn't higher praise they could give you. You know, that is, your word is your bond. If he says it, he does it. And it's a dying breed. It's a
Yeah.
dying breed. And those men who are willing to sit there and hold that line and fight and die on that hill right there. Um, yeah,
Yeah, because it's a different measure of success, right? And some of the probably the wealthiest people have given that up a long time ago, or had to sacrifice it many times. But there's people that's not it's not worth it, and
sure.
so yeah, it's a dying breed of feeling like that we can define success for ourselves, and definitely for me, it's about the choice of working with people that do fit that fit that definition, so we can keep encouraging and lifting those people up.
That winning that battle to look at the person in the mirror and know that they're a person of integrity, unbridled, unquestionable, that you hold the line. And it's such a thing. And when you get around people like that, it really is so wonderful. You know, like, oh, he told me it's going to be done. I'm not worried about it. What?
Totally.
Because I find myself there's so few people in business, in any of my businesses, that it's like, oh yeah, he said it, it's done. And I was just doing a deal, a book deal that we were putting together. Had 15 people committed they were going to take and contribute, whatever. We're at 7 right now. 7 of these 15 people, who I thought every one of them, I thought were people of character, and every one of
You
them.
had like 8 drop out, you mean, or
8 drop out of the
oh my
15.
goodness. Wow.
And these were all people. Some of them I didn't know as well, but like you had hopes.
Sure.
They
Sure.
seemed like, they felt like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime that something falls apart, it's that people have otherwise it's offered that they intend to do, then yeah, it's a surprise. You'd expect that. That's the default.
Well, the worst part of it was, I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you, I wasn't ridiculous. I knew it was going to be herding cats, and I knew that a lot of times to get people to do what they say they're going to do, you have to push. But a couple of the ones that came through right away, I was very surprised about. And again, my perception of them as people is altered because of that. Like
Mm-hmm.
these folks now, I know, like if the chips are down, the short list of who I call just got reshuffled a little bit. And
Totally.
I think that there's a value to you shouldn't care too much about what people think, but you should want to be respected by people whose respect it's worthy of to have. And I think that that's a worthwhile aspiration. We become so selfish as a society that we don't care what other people think, as opposed to, I know that this person, if they had one phone call to make, I'd be the one that they call because they know that about me. I don't
Right.
know. It just seems like it's a very old school way of thinking that's sort of going the way of the dodo. And I think that it's worth trying to fight to bring that back a little bit. But I digress, as I so often do.
I'm sure
Uh,
your audience agrees. I'm sure.
yeah, well, I think everybody would be like, people want to be around people like that, but they don't do the work to be people like that. Everybody wants to be part of that community, but they don't do the necessary thing to be the type of person that allows that kind of community to exist, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're
So,
biologically programmed to be selfish, but also to help each other. It's when we let go of more of our individual, I think,
yeah.
fears and desires, and focus on how what we're doing really helps everyone else around us. That it
Well, I think we've
becomes
become more so selfish as a society, and I think we're going further and further down that trend. And I hope at some point we realize that it's not getting us the net result of greater happiness. I mean, the thing I was reading not too long ago, we are the loneliest generation of Americans that has ever existed,
hmm
because our selfishness has isolated us so much, between that and social media and all the other things that we do to take and not have to make the sacrifices in order to integrate and be around other people. It's a thing. But let me ask you this, Blair, what are you most proud of in business that you've accomplished?
hmm. That's a great question.
I try for great. I often hit mediocre, but every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, launching my own business was a dream for a long time. And now I'm just about hitting the 5-year mark of when I filed for my LLC. And so to me, that feels like a pretty proud moment. I know that's like
Sure.
the most businesses fail within 5 years or whatever the usual kind of adage is around that. So I'm definitely proud of that. I think, really what we've been talking about, being able to stay true to hopefully what I set out to do with my business, to support people like that have integrity, that aren't looking to shortcut the system, and aren't like people I worked with in the past that I put a lot of, my time and effort into, and wasn't duly taken care of or appreciated in the way that I wanted to feel. And so making my goal more about the quality of my life, and thus the quality of my family's life and everyone else that I come in contact to, is going to be better this way, even if it doesn't mean it's going to make me richer faster. Maybe it's going to mean I'm going to make less money overall down the road. I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with feeling the way I felt for most of the years working for toxic people, or
Mm,
sacrificing my morals or values because it required carrying
sure.
out the will of someone else.
Yeah, no, I get that, being leveraged in that position. So, similar question, slightly more personal. What are you most proud of in life that you've accomplished to this point?
Hmm. Well, I bought my first home last year for the first
Congrats,
time.
brother. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a mountain house outside of LA because I've been renting in LA for like 11 years now. So
Oof.
this house has been like a dream I had for years and years, and even post pandemic the market was been a little crazy. So was able to find something that I love, and hopefully is now worth even more. We put a lot of time and money and effort into making it awesome, and yeah, I'm excited about this next chapter in my life with that now kind of going on, because it's becoming a less and less realizable dream for people in my generation.
Sure. No, I mean the the systems that are in place that have made home ownership more and more expensive, and I mean so much of it. People don't realize how much of it is on the zoning and governmental side, where they just keep doing things. As a builder, I mean, I can tell you, I have stayed, and all the builders I know stay behind the demand curve, significantly behind the demand curve, because the one thing that we can control as best we can is whether or not there's a ready, willing, and able buyer on the back end. And by staying behind the demand curve, we keep homes a scarce resource, so that when we bring them out, we can actually sell them. If they would actually do the things necessary to stop helping us so much and actually make homes more effectively affordable, that would be, amazing. But
Yeah.
sadly, I mean, and California is an example. There's a lot of zoning laws in California that make it so that there's just all this untouchable. We've got land for days, but you can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
It's brutal, but it's all
Yeah.
over the country. It's a
It's
thing.
hard. Yeah. It's just, it feels harder and harder, and so daunting that a lot of people don't even try or aspire to it. Mhm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's a an amount of wealth that has been built in the last short term here because of all the inflation in real estate that has made people really want the product again. It's just interesting to see how the tail end of an inflationary cycle is going to behave itself this time around compared to last, being the 1970s and early 80s. But it's
Mhm.
I'm very happy for my people that have made a lot of money using it and using it well. So let me ask you this: if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be?
I'd say I'd quote one of my favorites, Oscar Wilde: "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Like, I've talked
Yep.
about storytelling, I've talked about authenticity, and authenticity is not just be calm and collected on stage. It's being authentic to who you really are. Like, we need your story. We need your ideas, your creativity. We don't need you to go and copy someone else or emulate and act like someone else that you've seen on stage, or tell other people's stories. We need you to tell your story, and there's plenty of other people to speak for themselves.
Sure. All right. What one book would you recommend if you could?
Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah. Always a tough one. I think that one's
um
bad. You should see the next one.
What is one book I would recommend? I mean, I I worked with Keith Ferrazzi for a long time, and he wrote Never Eat Alone is his
Mhm.
first book. He's written several others since, but Never Eat Alone is really a guide to building connections with people. And if you want to accomplish anything about building relationships, and I think it's those principles that I learned earlier in my career and worked like kind of living in action while working with him for a while have just been kind of ingrained in me. So I think if you haven't, it's a great one to pick up. If I have to choose one,
Because
I'm
of
an
the
avid
awful
reader,
podcast.
so like
Yeah.
I'm reading all the time, and then I'm like, what have I read recently? Oh my gosh, there's probably so many. But if you're reading in general, if you're trying to get better, you're on the right track. So anything you pick up and don't put down will hopefully help you out.
I think it was a good safe choice. I mean, because the evil podcast host put you on the spot and made you pick just one book.
I hate that. It's okay. It's okay. I should be better prepared. I should just know these are the things that I'm
You
going
know,
to
I
say.
was on one once and they asked me to recommend 5 books, and like you, I mean,
Yeah.
I've read like 3,000 books in the last several years, and
Yeah.
every book in the world fled my head at that moment. I could not think of a title. And I'm sitting there like, and he bailed me out. He's like, you listen to so many, it's probably hard to pick. I'm like, yeah, let's go with that.
Yep.
I mean, it
Yep.
was one of the only times I've really been caught with my pants down was on a course. So sorry to do that to you, but usually
you
people have
know.
a favorite.
Yeah.
Favorite movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time is called Drop Dead Gorgeous. It's
No,
a
okay.
hilarious movie with Kirstie Alley and Kirsten Dunst and Ellen Barkin and a whole bunch of amazing people. And it's like a mockumentary style comedy about a beauty pageant in Minnesota. It's on Netflix
Nice.
now, I believe. It's kind of having a resurgence. It's like a 1999 film that I watched a million times as a teenager, and now is like a cult classic that people are starting to learn about if they weren't 13 in 1999. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I definitely recommend it. That one I can stand by.
All right. Well, see, it was easier the second one. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Famous person in history you'd want to meet if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since I just quoted him, I think it would be, and I'm reading a book about Oscar Wilde right now, so I'd be interested to meet him. He'd be interested in person, that's quoted often and lived a very interesting life. So yeah, why not?
Safe bet. All right. Similar question, but a bit more personal. What person from your past would you want to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could?
From my past. Yeah, I mean, maybe one of my teachers when I was in high school or middle school, just because I think getting their perspective on who I was then, and then in like just kind of a reflection on that, and like would be interesting because it's not some in a it's not usually a connection you hold on to, but they're people that
Sure.
come to learn a lot about you. So yeah, I think that'd be
Yeah,
interesting.
I can imagine it would be. What one piece of advice would you go back and give a younger version of you?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I would just say, like, to just understand that everything is going to work out okay. Like, no matter like what happens along the way, there's always like, you dread the thought of like, oh, I'm going to get fired, or oh, this is going to go wrong,
Sure.
and then this is going to happen. Like, just the constant anxiety of like unknown consequences or
Yeah, sure.
situations. And I guess after 20 years out here, and as an adult, you start to figure out that like you pick up the pieces and things always work out how they're supposed to, is what I've experienced.
Yeah, no, it never quite never usually goes as bad as we fear that it will.
Yeah,
Is the thing.
I used to always call it like that call to the principal's office syndrome, and then like for me it would be
Yeah,
like you just won an award. And it would never be like you're in trouble, you're a bad kid, and like, but that feeling, that gut sinking feeling that something
yeah,
awful
man.
happened or you're in big trouble, and then nothing happens.
No, it's a thing. I had something like that happen to me ways back. They called me to the board, and I'm like, hey, we want to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, geez, this is not good. What did I do?
Yeah.
They wanted to give me an award. And I was like, oh,
Ah!
wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, could you given me like a heads up maybe though? Like if that was the
Guys, how about you
case.
put some tone in the next email if you would?
Yeah.
Because, like it takes them 48 hours to
Congratulations. We want
congrat.
you to come to the
Right.
board for to receive an honor. Like, yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. So I'm going to need some Pepto Bismol to go with that.
Yeah, right.
So if you had to pick, I'm almost done here, but just I like to have these few questions
Sure.
here for people to get a feel for you, and like a little bit more who you are. Who would you want to be stuck in a foxhole with if you had to? Who would you pick to be stuck in and have your back?
I mean, I guess I'd pick my husband because that's
Okay.
I think that would be a good bet to make. Already bet on me in other respects, and I know that between the two of us, he's a much better shot. So
This is what you want.
yeah,
You want
yeah,
somebody that can handle the firearms well in
yep,
that foxhole.
exactly.
What do you do to unwind, Blair?
I mean, that's why I wanted this mountain house. I'm here now. We're kind of it's gonna be an Airbnb, and we'll go back and forth. But I love getting just out, and I like to listen to podcasts, of course. I like to just sit outside and play with my dogs or watch them play while I listen to podcasts. And yeah, like I've always felt it was like strange. Like I don't have hobbies, but I do. They're just it's mostly reading and consuming,
Yeah,
things, and I like, to just be able to be in my own mind, I guess.
yeah. Not billboard type hobbies, but hobbies that are good for the soul.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense. What's next for you? What's the next project? What's the next thing you're got
Yeah,
cooking?
well, I've actually been working on my own book and book proposals, so talking
Cool.
about toxic bosses and what I experienced, but also kind of what how I grew through the experiences and help other people out that are going through maybe similar experiences, or some people that might need some self reflection on being a better boss and being a better leader. And so getting that off the ground and doing more speaking myself around that has been a natural progression, I guess, that I've
Sure.
taken too long to. And then hopefully as my company grows, my management model is management that's holistic to building businesses, and that means not just your speaking, your other business pursuits, your other media pursuits, whether it's TV, film, other things like that. So hopefully you'll see me producing more creative stuff like that down the road, and just getting to be someone that's helping people really build their platform and really grow significantly, and make a huge impact.
Love it, man. Last question. Where can people find you, Blair?
Great question. You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn, Blair Bryant Nichols, and you can also find me at bbncreativemanagement.com and sign up for a free 30-minute call. Happy to chat with you about where you're at, and hopefully at least help point you in the right direction for next steps for you.
Great, Blair. Thank you so much for your time and for coming on here and for sharing some of your wisdom and your journey with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's good stuff. And I want to thank our listeners always for hanging out with us, spending our time with them, reminding you all the resources we have are on the Close for Life website. And as I always like to do before I leave, reminding you that there is never a good excuse not to know your shit. Till next time, guys.